Matty, it somehow seems really weird that this is the very first time you're on the show, but I am happy that you're here now, happy to have new music from you, and welcome.
Hey, man, it's an honor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, the reason for having you on the show this go-round is because of the brand new record that is your new solo record, and it's called Unstoppable. And how do you classify this as compared to Memphis May Fire?
You know, it's a side project for me, but the honest truth is that, you know, when I started this project, I didn't know what God was going to do with it, and it was just for him to hopefully use to bless people and everything, and it just ended up being such a bigger project than I thought it would be. And these days I kind of feel like God is telling me to pursue both at the same time equally, you know. So it started out as a side project, and now it's a full-time thing.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Now, a lot of people, I would assume, know you from being the lead singer of Memphis May Fire, which, of course, is most definitely not a pop band or pop project. How do you get from there to where you're at now? I mean, how does that happen?
Well, you know, I was raised on Christian music. You know, my family kind of treated music like most families treat sports. You know, like we very musical-oriented household, and we basically would go to concerts every weekend. And, you know, any Christian festival that was up in the Northwest where I grew up, like we would always be there. And my older brother was a musician and had a Christian band called Simon's Cross. I grew up watching him play. And so it's just always been such a staple in my life. And even these days, you know, like I write and record and tour heavy music with Memphis May Fire, and it's been great, and it's awesome. And God definitely uses me to be a light in a lot of dark places with that. But even when I'm home from tour, I still listen to Christian radio. It's such a big part of my life. And so I've always wanted to do a project like this. And I think a lot of people from the outside looking in, it's kind of crazy to have these two polar opposite genre projects. But for me, it's very therapeutic, you know, to be able to get to do heavy music and honor God with that. And then to be able to do this other project, playing and performing music, writing, recording, performing music that I'm so passionate about. It's just awesome. So it's like an honor for me to be a part of the Christian music industry at this point in my life. I've always wanted to be a part of writing music that impacts people the way that I've been impacted by it my whole life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Now, before we move into talking more about the record itself, you had mentioned that you grew up listening to Christian music, which is kind of one of those things that I thought would be more of a thing that I would hear about doing what I do now, doing this show. But it always feels like it's one of those things that especially among Christian rock musicians, a lot of them did not grow up either A, in the church, or B, they did, but Christian music wasn't necessarily a part of their life until they were much older. What artists would you say impacted you the most when you were listening to Christian music at a young age? Yeah,
well, I mean, my first concert ever was Jars of Clay. So, I mean,
wow.
You know, I wasn't allowed to listen to secular music. So, I mean, my rock stars were DC Talk, Audio Adrenaline, Mercy Me, you know, and that was my entire, you know, CD collection. Right. Was just all bands made up like that. And so that was the only music that I knew. And even these days, you know, like I said, when I'm home and I'm listening to radio, it's like that's still what fills my spirit. You know what I mean? So I've never really separated from that. It's always been a big part of my life.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome. Well, now that we've gotten that kind of laid out, what do you feel like people will be maybe surprised with Unstoppable as compared to the self-titled release that you also did as a solo project earlier?
You know, I think it was just really more well thought out. You know, with that first solo project record I did, I was signed to a different label, which is the same label that the band is signed to. And I just told them I wanted to do a side project, and I didn't really know where I was going with it. I knew that I wanted to write Christian music, but I didn't understand really how to get to that point because I'd been living in this other world for so long and work with a lot of really great writers and do co-writes, which was a totally new experience for me. And so from front to back, the record just kind of feels fluid and it feels like it works together. Whereas, you know, with that last record, I think it was a lot more all over the place.
Okay. Yeah, because it was weird because it makes sense now hearing that you said that the first solo record was produced by the guy who did a lot of the Memphis May Fire stuff, because to me it was weird because while it was more of a pop tinged record, there was still something aggressive about the way it was produced that I thought was very interesting to hear, because like if you were to describe it, it was kind of hard because you're like, well, there's not really heavy guitars, there's not screaming, but somehow it still feels very intense in a way that you would not expect based off the fact that it was kind of fronted as, oh, this is Matty Mullins' pop project or contemporary project or whatever, you know, kind of adjective was used to describe it. And then I'd listen to it, I'm like, it feels weird and not in a bad way, but it was just an odd juxtaposition with that record. But that is
right.
That is
yeah,
interesting.
just basically a learning process, just kind of trying to find my place in this genre and just going through the motions and the growing pains of figuring out what it's like to be a part of a different world of music. And I'm thankful that record was able to help me do that, and I'm really thankful for the place that I got to with this new one. So
yeah, for sure. Now, with this new one, what do you think you're most proud of with this record overall?
I don't know. It's hard to call anything proud because there's really not any reason why it should have worked. You know what I mean? Like the record, it's for me. You know what I mean? Like I love this genre of music. I wanted to write music like this. But nobody knows who I am in that world. You know what I mean? So it's like it shouldn't have worked as seamlessly as it did. And God continuously kept opening like all these doors. My first co-write, I told you I was new to co-writing and I was really uncomfortable about it. I'd never done it before, so I was like, man, I don't know if I want to sit in a room with someone I don't know and create art together. It felt strange. But my label was like, well, you should just try it, and so I did. And my first co-write was with Pete Kipley, who produced I Can Only Imagine for Mercy Me, and he found out that I was a Matthew West fan, and so he took me to his house. And like that day, like that minute, like he like put me in his truck and took me to Matthew's house and was like, Matthew, you got to meet this kid. And Matthew invited us in and was like, well, man, I love your story. I want to be a part of this song. And so my first co-write ended up being with Kipley and Matthew West. And it was just like crazy, dude. Like no one gets opportunities like that without God's hand just really being involved. That happened. And then I didn't know Jordan Fleas, and I tweeted at him because I saw him perform at an award show, and I told him he did a great job, and we ended up connecting, and then he ended up being on the record, and it was all so seamless that it was just like I could feel God saying like, listen, I know that this project is about me. I know these songs are about me. So just follow my lead and I'm going to bless it. And that's what it's been like. So it's like when I think of what I'm most proud of with this record, it's more so what I'm just so surprised by that God like really wants to use this project, and I'm so happy to let him to. So
nice. Now I'm sure that I am not in any way near the first person to point out that it's interesting that you had Jordan on as a guest vocal, because he also, of course, it comes from a heavy music background and then came in and has, of course, like now he's kind of taken over the airways with songs like The River, which is really interesting. Did you guys seem to have like a fairly similar experience with that crossover?
I guess, but I didn't even know. You know what I mean? Like I had no idea that he had the same background as I did until we got together and started collaborating for that song. And so, I mean, it's all very ironic, but it's very cool. Like it's very God breathed that he brought, possibly the only other person in Christian pop music that came from heavy music, into my life that, and for us to collaborate together on my first real effort. I don't know, man. It's just been, it's like miraculous. Honest to God, it's been miraculous.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, how many fans of Memphis May Fire have you noticed either picking up or being surprised at, or even just being involved with ingesting this new solo project effort of yours? It's
been crazy because, I mean, with the first record that I put out, I think a lot of people were like, oh, whoa, well, if that's your solo style, I'm going to stick with Memphis. And I expected that, which is totally fine. I mean, obviously, this project isn't for everybody, and that project isn't for everybody. So it makes sense. It's fine. And I just expected to have maybe a small percentage of Memphis fans kind of supporting me through this project with this record. And ever since it's been out, like I've heard nothing but positive comments. You know what I mean? Like there's some forms of social media and stuff where I just don't look, like I never read YouTube comments because it's just kind of like a, keyboard warrior, like, like
it's a haven for trolls.
Yeah. And I just, obviously like so much of that is invalid and ridiculous that I just don't even care to pay attention. But I mean, like on my social media platforms where people really give me their honest opinions on my Instagram and my Twitter and my Facebook and everything, it's been like, I mean, man, I have seen people that don't believe in Jesus that have told me they've been blessed by the record. Like I'm telling you, it's crazy. And it's insane. How well it's working it just shouldn't happen like that. You know what I mean? Right. So I feel like that's my purpose. You know what I mean? Is like to share the love of Jesus that changed my life with these people that don't know about it yet, and that haven't experienced it yet. And I just get fired up about that. People who say like, hey man, well, I'm not religious or anything, but I really like this record, and they're going to keep listening to it, and they're going to feel the presence of God through that music because he can speak through it. And so it's just been really great.
Very cool, man. I like that. That's fantastic. What is touring going to look like with this one? Because I know that Memphis tours quite a bit, and I know that makes it a challenge.
I mean, I've given different answers in different interviews for that. Like, you know, like sometimes I'll be like, no, like it's impossible. You know what I mean? Like Memphis is on the road like 250 plus days a year, and we travel worldwide. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the month, we're going to Spain, and then we go to England, and then we come back and we're on Warped Tour all summer. And it's just like, just the time off that I have with Memphis would barely be enough to tour, let alone like prepare and like put together a band and all that stuff. And so when I signed this record deal, like the label knew full well that I had no intention of touring on it. And maybe it's something later in life where I will tour this project full time. I don't know. But my other answer is like, well, God's consistently shown me what this project is capable of because he's in charge of it. So who am I to say what he can and can't do as far as the touring schedule goes? I don't know, man. Like everything's been so great and so miraculous that I don't want to tell God what he can and can't do. So Who knows? The answer is who knows. I'm taking it one day at a time. Like I don't have any friends or like mentors that balance two polar opposite music projects at the same time. So I don't really have anybody to ask questions to, you know? So, I just kind of, you know, one day at a time, one step at a time in faith, and whatever God wants me to do, that's what I'll do.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. Do you think that having done this project and of course the previous record as a solo project, has that in any way informed or changed the way that you think about or handle music for Memphis May Fire?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's such a different project. I mean, like when God really started opening my eyes to how meaningless everything else in the music industry is other than using music to glorify him. It was at the same time that I started this solo project. So I mean, like the record that Memphis put out at that same time frame was called Unconditional, and it was about my struggles with anxiety and depression and how God was changing my life through that, and how he was walking through that season with me. And then just right after we did that record, I did my first solo record. And so, both projects for me at this point, and I can't speak for the band, but for me are very ministry focused. As far as like songwriting and stuff goes, like Memphis has never co-written anything. It's always just been me and Kellen, our guitarist. We've just written everything for the band since I've been in the band. And so I guess maybe the only thing is just maybe my eyes have been open to how awesome co-writing can be. And maybe Memphis will start incorporating that into their records. The last thing that I know of, at least right off the top of my head, that I wanted to bring up is something that's more of a statement than a question as such. Well, maybe I'm going to phrase it as a question. Has anyone ever told you that you are like the most clean-cut tattooed guy ever? I mean, it's amazing to me. Man, that's awesome. I've always been really passionate about men's grooming. That's why I started my own hair product company. And so, I guess I've just always been drawn to that, like just slick, like fresh, clean cut look. And so that's how I present myself. But I also have a lot of tattoos all over my body, but yeah, I mean, in kind of that, like barber world, there's a lot of guys just like me covered in tattoos that have really clean cut hair, and I don't know, I guess it's like a small niche group that I'm a part of. Yeah, for sure. And no shade at all, man. I think that you have a truly cool and unique look, and I very much appreciate it. But every time I look at your pictures, I'm like, it's kind of like you doing a contemporary or pop solo project and while still being the lead singer of a metal band is kind of a weird thing that doesn't seem like it ought to work, but yet somehow it does, and you managed to pull it off very beautifully. So that's just fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Oh man. Well, is there anything else that you want to share? Well, I guess we should probably address, since the song Unstoppable is of course not only the title track for the record, but since it's the current single, let's talk about that song in general. I mean, obviously you did it with Jordan Felice, but what was the meaning behind that song for you? Totally. We were writing that song kind of at the time frame when, the elections had started, and it just seemed like all of America was just at each other's throats. And a lot of people were nervous and scared and feeling like hope was just being stripped away from them. And I just wanted to remind people, hey, it doesn't matter who's president. God is on the throne. It doesn't matter what you're going through in your life and how bad it looks. God has a plan. He's in control, and his love is unstoppable. The way that he loves us is the only reason why we are on this planet, so that we can discover how he loves us and so that we can love him. That's the purpose of life, to love and be loved by the one that loves us most. And so I just wanted to say that, but I wanted to say it with a smile on my face. I didn't want to do like a slow ballad with that message. Right. I wanted to say, hey, here's the real deal, but let's be happy about it. And so that's why it's got this funky upbeat vibe. And the message is very serious. It's dead serious, but it's but we're saying it with joy. And that was the goal for the song with songwriting. And I wrote the song with a guy named Aaron Rice, who does a lot of writing for like Toby Mac and stuff. So he knows perfect that kind of funky up tempo vibe. And it just felt like it worked. It was one of those co-writes that went really quick and you just walk out of the room feeling accomplished. And so I really think we got what we were looking for.
And then also we'd like to play one other song off of the record. Just kind of whenever we have an interview, we like to play more than one just so that people get a good feel for the artist, especially if they don't know them that well yet or they haven't heard the new project or whatever. What other song would you like us to play? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, well, I think the next single that's going to go to radio it's called The Best Is Yet to Come.
Okay.
And so if you want to throw that one into the mix too, that'd be awesome. And then, who knows, maybe down the road you guys will end up playing it anyways.
There you go, man. Sounds good. Sounds good. Awesome. Well, we'll do that for sure. Is there anything else that you want to throw out there, either about upcoming plans that you have personally or about the record or about Memphis stuff, whatever may be kind of top of mind for you?
The record is out now. If you like buying physical copies, which obviously artists love when people do that because you really get to hold the product that we created,
Absolutely.
It's available at Best Buy and Lifeway and Mardell.
Okay.
So if you're into that, that's awesome. And if you're a digital person, that's cool too. It's iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, whatever, SoundCloud, whatever you listen to. So yeah, the record is out, and all I want is for people to hear it. And that's it, man. I'm just really excited. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much.